In the scorching hush of the New Mexico frontier, a lone rider saved an Apache woman who opened her eyes, only to steal his heart before either of them spoke a word. Their worlds were meant to collide only in conflict, yet fate bound their spirits overnight in ways neither could have foreseen. And what happened after reshaped both their lives forever. Before we ride into this tale, my friend, take a breath, settle into your seat, and if you enjoy powerful frontier love stories, please like this video, subscribe, and share it. It helps the channel more than you know. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? I genuinely love to know. Now, let's begin. The evening sky over Dust Ridge Basin, 1887, carried a fierce stillness, the kind that made even seasoned riders slow their pace. Calder Brooks, a quiet cowboy known more for his miles than his words, had been traveling the lonely trail all afternoon. His horse moved with familiar rhythm, hooves tapping the hard-packed earth like an old friend humming a tune. Calder wasn't expecting trouble. Not that night. Not on that trail. But fate had a way of arriving when a man least expected it. At first, he saw nothing more than a crumpled shape, maybe a ragged tarp or a pile of old cloth tossed by the wind. But something about it held his eye. Some instinct rose in him, sharp and warning. He tugged on the reins, guiding his horse closer. As the distance closed, dread crept into his chest. It wasn't cloth. It wasn't debris. It was a body, motionless, fragile against the vast emptiness. Calder's stomach tightened. No one collapsed in this desert and survived long. Not with the heat tearing moisture from the bones. Not with nightfall dropping the temperature like a blade. He swung off his horse before its gait fully stopped, boots sinking into the powdered dust. The closer he stepped, the clearer the form became. Tattered clothing, sunburnt skin, faint streaks of dried blood across her fingers like she'd clawed her way through something terrible. She was young, but her age wasn't what hit him hardest. It was the fragile, barely there rise of her chest, breathing that sounded softer than a dying ember. Calder knelt, his shadow falling over her like a shield against the sinking sun. He didn't think about who she might belong to. Didn't think about the danger of being found with her. Didn't think about the bitter history between settlers and Apache families. All he saw was a life trying desperately to hold on. He uncapped his canteen and pressed it to her cracked lips. A single droplet touched her mouth. Her throat twitched, weak, but she swallowed. Relief washed over him like cool rain through a drought. Helping her could bring deadly trouble. Apache warriors might think he'd harmed her. Settlers might accuse him of treason. But Calder Brooks was not the kind of man who measured morality through fear. A life in danger was a life he couldn't walk away from. He lifted her gently. She weighed almost nothing, like she had been starved, chased, pushed past human limits. Carefully, he secured her on his horse, adjusting his gear to cradle her safely. Then he turned toward his camp, a hidden nook near a jagged ridge of stone where he often rested between long rides. Night in the desert fell quick and merciless. One moment there was heat, the next a cold so sharp it could crack bones. Calder rode fast, checking her breathing every few heartbeats. When he reached camp, the horizon glowed deep purple. He lowered her onto his bedroll, lit a fire, and heated water to tend to her wounds. Some cuts were fresh, thin slashes along her arms. Others, deeper bruises and scrapes, looked older, signs of days spent running. He cleaned each wound with slow patience, touching only where necessary. This wasn't just medical care. It was restoring dignity to a person the world had nearly discarded. The fire crackled softly, casting warm light over her silent frame. Calder lifted her head gently, offering her more water. She swallowed in faint, jerky motions, each one pulling her a little further from the brink. Still, she didn't wake. Calder leaned against a rock, rifle at his side, eyes watching the darkness with the practiced alertness of a man who had seen night ambushes before. Coyotes prowled for anything helpless. Bandits hunted in silence. And whoever had driven this young woman to collapse might return. Hours passed. The moon climbed. Silver replaced the sun's dying gold. A strange weight settled in Calder's chest, a responsibility he didn't fully understand. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, but something within him tightened at the thought of harm coming to her. Calder had lived alone for years, trusted no one but his horse and the trail. But that night, he guarded a stranger with a loyalty he hadn't felt in a long time. She stirred occasionally, flinching at shadows and dreams he couldn't see. Her fingers trembled, gripping the blanket he'd tucked around her. Calder whispered soft words, gentle nonsense meant only to soothe. Her presence stirred memories he had buried, family he lost, promises he had once made, emotional wounds deeper than any scar on his skin. But destiny doesn't ask permission. It simply arrives. By the time dawn began to brush lightly across the canyon, Calder's eyes had grown heavy, yet he stayed awake. Light slowly crept over the rocky ridges, falling across her bruised features. Her lashes twitched. Calder's breath caught. Then her eyes opened, dark, steady, uncertain, alive. For a moment she simply stared, confused, trying to make sense of the camp, the fire, the stranger at her side. Calder felt something shift deep inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. A pull, a spark he couldn't explain. She attempted to push herself upright, but winced, pain flashing across her face. Calder lifted his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm, then helped her sit without placing a demanding touch. "You're safe," he said softly. "Found you on the trail. You were barely breathing." She blinked, her gaze guarded. Fear and strength battled quietly inside her eyes. But beneath that, something else flickered. A foundation of courage, thin but unbroken. Finally, her lips parted. A name escaped in a faint whisper. "Atsaya." Calder repeated it softly, making sure he'd heard right. The way her eyes softened told him he had. She glanced at her bandages, at the fire, then back at him, measuring his intentions with a survivor's precision. Calder introduced himself. Her eyes studied him, then softened. She whispered a small, fragile "thank you," barely more than breath, but powerful enough to tighten his chest. He didn't know why her voice struck him so deeply. Maybe it was her resilience hidden beneath exhaustion. Maybe it was the quiet fire in her gaze. Or maybe fate had carved their meeting into the world long before they crossed paths. As sunlight warmed her skin, she tried to explain, voice trembling, the attack that shattered her world. Her people had been ambushed, scattered, chased through the hills. She had run until her body gave out, and the desert swallowed her strength. Calder listened, jaw tightening, anger simmering beneath the calm surface of his face. He didn't interrupt. He simply waited, letting her shape the silence. Then, softly, and with a conviction that surprised even him, he promised she would not run anymore. At first, disbelief filled her eyes. Safety wasn't something she was used to, but the more she looked at him, the more she seemed to see a truth worth trusting. Calder Brooks was not a man of easy promises. Life had battered that trait out of him long ago. But this one came natural, like breathing. Atsaya's breathing steadied, though tension clung to her shoulders. She remained caught between fear and the unfamiliar warmth of security. Calder noticed everything: her trembling fingers, the slight shake in her breaths, the hidden strength she clung to despite her pain. He felt a pull toward her, a deep, silent ache he didn't understand. Her bravery softened something in him, something he thought had been lost to the past. She watched him too, not with suspicion, but with a cautious curiosity. When their eyes locked, a quiet understanding passed between them, still new, still delicate, but real enough to grip both their hearts. Calder poured a small cup of water and helped her drink without straining her injuries. Her fingers brushed his knuckles, and a jolt shot through him. A spark, unexpected, dangerous, alive. The morning grew brighter, but the space between them felt wrapped in something softer, warmer, a bubble untouched by the cruel world beyond. Calder found himself wondering about her dreams, her fears, who she'd been before the world turned cruel. Somewhere inside those thoughts, a terrifying truth formed. He didn't want to lose her. Not after tonight. Not after seeing strength bloom in her eyes. Not after feeling something inside him wake up again. Atsaya looked at him with gratitude, uncertainty, and a fragile glimmer of hope. "Thank you," she whispered again, this time deeper, steadier. Calder felt his heart twist. Something within him shifted permanently the moment she spoke her name. She had become important, not by choice, but by the simple act of surviving in his presence. Protecting her wasn't optional anymore. It felt carved into his soul. The desert had brought them together by chance, but destiny never worked by chance. As a breeze carried the scent of morning sage across Dust Ridge Basin, Calder felt truth settle deep within him. His life had changed the moment she opened her eyes. And though Atsaya was bruised and exhausted, she felt her own future bending too. Two strangers, bound by survival, woven by fate, now stood at the beginning of a story neither could yet imagine. And before we continue deeper into their journey, if you're enjoying this tale, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? Your story matters here. Your presence matters here. And their story is just beginning.